Well, hey there, partners. I don't know why I chose that new theme song, but my office companion today is making faces. I think I picked the wrong one. Hey, everybody. Well, it's the day after tax day and 3 days after Easter, so it must be time for yet another Ball Publishing webinar. This time on the topic, growing edible crops with LED lighting. I'm Chris Beytes, editor of GrowerTalks and Green Profit magazines and the e-newsletter Acres Online, and I'm going to be your host for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so as we tackle that very topic. Now, based on registration, a fair number of you are really curious about this topic. In fact, we have attendees from all around the world today. It's pretty exciting. All want to know more about LED lighting, specifically on edible crops. This is the second webinar I've done in conjunction with our expert and sponsor, Philips. Back in November, I hosted one called LED Lighting as a Commercial Possibility, Myth, or Reality. You may recall that. If not, you can go into the archives and view that one. But this time, we're going to do a more in-depth look at why you should add supplemental light, how LED lights compare with traditional high-pressure sodium, and finally, give a little bit about some of the success stories that Philips have had here in North America. Now, even though I've been covering LEDs for 15 years or so, I am, as usual, not the expert on the topic. But this week we have two, and I'm lucky enough to have one sitting right beside me in studio today. He is Doug Marlow, Business Development Manager for Philips. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You didn't like my theme song.
It was an interesting choice.
Did you like the surf style one better? I was thinking, you know, I was just in California for the trials out there. I was in a surf mode. You didn't like the heavy metal one. All right, next time I'll come up with something else. Doug, what is a business development manager for Philips?
I'm responsible for the development of opportunities for Philips within the high wire vegetable sector in North America, so Canada, U.S., but focused on high wire vegetables.
And high wire is not about like a balancing act,
no.
But that's where you grow vertical.
It
vertical
can be a balancing act.
Vertical production up strings or wires in the greenhouse where the plants are like 10 or 12 feet tall.
Essentially, tomatoes and cucumbers, primarily, some peppers.
All right, very cool. Now, next, broadcasting from, I checked this statistic, 4,206 miles away from Venlo, Holland, our second expert, Erik Stappers. Welcome, Erik.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Hello,
Should I say goedemiddag, but that's only afternoon. It's now evening where you are, 7 p.m., right?
Yes, it is 7 p.m. at my place at the moment. That's right.
All right, very good. And you are a plant specialist, so it's nice that Philips isn't just focused on the hardware, but you make sure that their hardware does good stuff for our plants, right?
Yeah, that's the best summarize I can give, actually. Yes.
All right, very good. Well, we're gonna hear your expertise in just a bit. Let me get there's me as usual broadcasting with Doug sitting right next to me in the palatial Ball Publishing studios. Doug, stop elbowing me. I know it's a little cramped here, but there you go. So, hey, everybody. Now, quickly, somebody just asked through the chat area, says, is there a dial-in number I can't hear? Well, here's what you need to do. I'm hoping this gentleman is reading this right now, because obviously he can't hear me. This is how you get the audio hooked up. All the rest of you figured it out. I'm sure he will as well. So I'll leave that just there for a second, and if he still hasn't gotten it figured out, I'll send him a quick message once Doug's talking. And then, if you have questions as we go along, use either the chat or the Q&A area, and we will field them. In fact, we've already gotten one here. We're not going to tackle that one yet, Van. Hang on. If you have questions, we will tackle them if they pertain to the topic that Doug or Erik happen to be on. We'll grab it right then. If not, we've got a Q&A period at the very end. And if your question is really complicated, we'll direct you to the Philips website where you can get like serious help. And if something happens where you just can't stick on for the webinar or you want to view it again later or share it with colleagues, go to the same place you signed up, ballpublishing.com/webinars, and probably within, well, as quickly as we can, we will have this webinar archived for your future viewing pleasure. I think that is all I've got. Doug, you ready to go?
I am.
All right, let's dive into growing edible crops with LED lighting.
Well, good afternoon, Chris. Thanks for hosting this, and thank you everyone that has joined, all 82 of you so far, so that's wonderful. So we're going to talk about growing edible crops with LED lighting, and I just want to clarify that this will be primarily focused on high wire vegetable, tomato, cucumber, maybe a bit of peppers, and lettuce, rather than floriculture crops. So I just want to make that clear at the beginning. But the agenda, we're going to look at new opportunities with light and lighting in general in terms of horticultural lighting and LEDs. Light, what is it and why should we be interested in using it? And we're going to look at a little bit, some comparisons between LEDs, and which of course are light emitting diodes, and high pressure sodium. And we're going to talk a little bit also and about innovative growers and the successes that they have had with LEDs. So some pictures here, Chris, of
They'll look happy.
They're happy. They're happy about their decision to use LEDs. We've got a tomato grower that's growing a small fruited tomato, piccolo. We have then a beefsteak grower in the upper right that is quite happy about his beefsteak tomato production. Lettuce grower in the bottom left. That is a new installation. They have really done a nice job there. Cucumber grower on the west coast of Canada, and a lettuce grower also located in Canada. So what we wanted to do here was just give the audience a bit of an overview visually of some of the projects that we have going on various crops and their applications.
Now, you wanted me to conduct a quick poll, so we're going to do that right now. Let me open up the poll. And if you would all out there would just take a brief second or a few seconds to answer the question. Click whichever crops apply that you happen to be producing, or if none yet, click the none. And they are all coming in beautifully here. I'm going to let that go for just kind of a second. Berries. Why not berries, right?
Why not berries? Strawberries. Strawberries right now I would put as one of the fastest growing, not just from an inquiry point of view, but probably one of the fastest growing crops to be installed. That and lettuce are growing at a phenomenal rate in North America.
I'm surprised how many lettuce growers there are. We're going to be awash in hydroponic LED grown lettuce here pretty soon, I think. We're going to need more stuff to go on the lettuce.
Yeah. But I think also, you see, in North America, we talk a lot about strawberries, but in Europe, they're all, and maybe Erik can address this later on, and is blackberries and other berries as well in the greenhouse.
Very cool. All right, we'll let you keep filling out the poll. Got a couple of minutes left, but we're going to go on to the next slide. So why add light?
Well, yeah, that is a question growers, when we begin a discussion with a grower about their needs or what they're trying to achieve, let's say, why do you want to add light? And I think that's a great question. So really what adding light is, if we look at the high wire vegetable and lettuces and leafy greens, it's all about winter production. It's about providing sufficient light during that low light period when we don't have enough light. We need to supplement that. And, we've got consumers, obviously this woman's dressed up, it's winter, but she still wants a good selection of locally produced produce in between October and or November, certainly, and February. So what we see and talk about with growers is that During that winter, we have a low local supply, and during the summer, we've got a high local supply. And but the demand for fresh fruits and vegetables doesn't seem to waver very much. It's a straight line. But what this creates for winter production is an opportunity for growers to take advantage of the low supply and as a consequence of that, higher fruit prices in the winter. This is really where it all comes down to. So we've got a grower here that has certainly taken advantage of that. His latitude is about 50 degrees north on the western side of Canada. He decided to install LED interlighting and LED top lighting on not only his piccolo but also on his beefsteak varieties. He needs to produce in the winter. He needs a constant supply for his market. If he doesn't, he runs the risk of losing that market to someone else, most likely foreign imports. So for supplemental lighting for plant growth, we need to look at growing power. So light provides power. It increases production. We know the old adage of 1% increase in light increases production 1%. Is it? I mean, that's not an academic thing. It's just an adage. We know less light, less production. There's not only the production aspect, but and yield, production yield, but also quality. If we look at winter growing cucumbers, they're often pale. Erik can discuss that. And we also have more control. The grower can plan. When is he going to plant so that he can take advantage of those higher prices? Timing, consistent quality. But Erik, you've grown cucumbers. Can you say a bit more about the quality as a result of putting in lighting?
Yes, sure, I can. Well, what my experience is when you add artificial light in your cucumber cultivation, then of course the production increases, but maybe even more important is that quality issues like shelf life and mainly the color of the fruits, they improve a lot. So, and that's another benefit besides the increased production.
So the other thing, as we mentioned just a moment ago, was the grower control. So the grower with supplemental lighting, artificial lighting, whatever word you'd like to use, has the control over when he or she plants and right, how that comes into production. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as Erik just said, then that results in consistent quality year-round. Would you like to take this on, Erik? Describe a little bit about how the components all fit together.
Yeah, sure. Because today we're talking about supplemental lighting, but besides that, there's all kinds of factors which in the end contribute to the growth and the development of your crop. So Doc already outlined a bit what the function of the light part is, but with only light you don't achieve any growth. So other factors which are important to take into account, of course, as we all might know, is the temperature of the room, but even more important, the temperature of your plant. And besides that, CO2, carbon dioxide, is a very important growing factor. The higher, or usually we can say the higher the level, the more beneficial for your crop growth. And then of course there's water and related to that nutrition, which need to be in an optimal form to realize the most optimal conditions for plant growth. And the combination of all these factors together, they realize the growth and the development of your crops.
And I think also where people have to understand or need to understand is that as each one of these components, light, CO2, water, nutrition, temperature, as each one of those changes, or you increase one, then the others then become limiting factors. So up until recently, when growers have not been using supplemental lighting, okay, light was the limiting factor. They had to look at how much CO2 or how much temperature and water and things. A grower adds light, the plant is going to make more fruit. That fruit is mostly water. The water has to come from somewhere. Temperature and light have to be balanced. I've got more light, I've got to add a little more temperature at the appropriate time, and things like that. So this on the screen is really something that is dynamic. It's in flux. We can't change one without at least considering the others. So we have, to carry that on just a step farther along, we have 4 components that directly affect or are integral to how we create a light plan. All of these characteristics are involved in that, and intensity, how much light are we giving in terms of at the moment. The duration, how long each day are we providing that light, the photo period, the spectrum, those are the wavelengths of light that we're providing for the crop, and uniformity. We don't want dark spots in our crop. We want the light to be as uniform as possible. And when we look at all of these components together, it really summarizes individually what the daily light integral means, or DLI. Erik?
Yep, thank you, Doug. So when we look at light and how it's used by plants, we can generally say that when applying LEDs, we mainly use blue and red light colors, blue and red wavelengths actually. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that research has turned out that plants are very sensitive for mainly blue and red photons. So that means that the photons with a certain wavelength, red and blue can be used most efficient for the plant. One other thing is that as we with our eyes look at crops or look at plants, then we see plants as green things, and the reason for that is that the green photons are being reflected by the plant. So our eye basically captures the light which is reflected by the plant, which in general is green light. That means that all the other light colors of the light which is captured by the plant is used for photosynthesis, or either increasing the temperature of your leaf. So it's adding energy in the form of warmth or heat to your crops.
So what Erik was just saying there is captured in this. This is sunlight. So let's imagine that this is all of the visible wavelengths. This is the photosynthetically active radiation, 400 to 700 nanometers. So as Erik was commenting, the plants really want blue light and red light, deep red, because those wavelengths really, we'll see in a moment, have been have been shown to really stimulate photosynthesis. The plant is most sensitive to those. But Erik also mentioned wavelengths that are farther to the right that contribute to the heat of the plant, tissue heat, the infrared, let's say, the wavelengths that make us feel warm when we're standing in the sunshine. They do the same for the plant, and it's also an important component. But when we look at wavelengths and that sensitivity, that photosynthetic sensitivity that Erik referred to, we can see by this McCree curve, which is somewhat generalized, but I think it still creates a very nice picture of helps us understand. But we can see those two peaks, one in the blue and one in the red, where the most plants have the greatest sensitivity and therefore efficiency, light use efficiency for photosynthesis. And that is why we are most interested in applying those wavelengths, say 440 roughly and 660 nanometers wavelength. That's what we want to offer the crop. But it's not to say that the yellow, orange, and greens are not important, because they certainly are. They might be considered by some as the micronutrients of light, whereas the blue and the red are the macronutrients, and I'm using the terms loosely. We want to, with supplemental lighting, to give the plant the most efficient or the wavelengths that they really want. Here we can see our old friend, the HPS. Most of its light is in that orange, yellow, green wavelengths, not in that 660 and 440 wavelengths that the plant, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, really are sensitive to. But if we look at the LEDs, we can see that we have focused on that red and blue, where the photosystem 1 and photosystem 2 are most sensitive. And so in this particular situation, we can see that let's put the energy that we give the LED light, let's have it just create red and blue. Let's just go for horsepower. When we're growing in a greenhouse, the plant will also receive the white light, let's call it, that orange, yellow, green that humans see as white. They will get that as well. What we want to do is really push those photosystems that are creating, or making that photosynthesis happen.
But then, Doug, that would impact anyone growing indoors, 100% under LED and only giving a plant blue and red. They're not getting the other portion of the spectrum, the micronutrients, as you kind of illustrated us, which I think is a great way to look at it.
Yeah, so maybe in sole source lighting, which is the indoor lighting, there's no other natural source of light. The grower would choose for having a white component in there to fill in that white light area, satisfy that need of the
But it
plant.
also explains why adding LED lighting in an already bright greenhouse does have an impact on the plant. The sun isn't providing everything.
Yeah.
All right.
Erik, do you want to address this
Yeah,
why
sure.
red and blue?
So what we mentioned previously, and what you all could see in the graphs Doug just explained, is that in our LEDs we use blue light, red light, and far red light. And I just would like to go a little more into the depth of the function of all these light colors. Starting with the blue, there's a couple of functions for blue light, and the most important one is that the amount of blue light and also the ratio between blue light and the other light colors determines the morphology of your crop. And in general, you can say that the more blue light you have, the more compact your crop will grow.
Now, Erik, here's a question from one of our attendees. Van wants to know, and I don't know if you can answer this, is there a specific wavelength that enhances variegation in foliage? Or do we know that?
Then yeah, you have to help me a little bit. What
variegation
what
meaning
with
you've got foliage
yeah.
that's green and white or multicolored green.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly on say foliage plants, I would suppose, because variegation isn't something you're interested in food crops, which is of course what we're tackling on today's webinar. But I thought it was an interesting question. Maybe that's one that needs to be researched.
Erik, maybe let's just turn that a little bit. Let's turn it. For example, let's think of the variegation in terms of lettuce and the enhancement of red color in red type lettuces. Maybe let's look at it that way because we're talking about edible crops.
Yeah, well, when you talk about the specific wavelengths you need, then as Philips, what we usually focus on is these, as you could see in the previous slide, is these narrow band LEDs. And up to now we haven't seen any. That one. Up to now we haven't had any reasons to broaden up this spectrum in order to realize specific kinds of crop development. What has a huge impact actually is the ratio between the blue, red, and far red part of your total light spectrum, and that's how we usually control the supplemental light in order to realize a certain crop development a grower wishes.
Is that why we're seeing so much more red here? The peak is higher than the blue? Is that what I'm reading there, or is that something different?
Partly, but that's actually a good question. Why is the peak on the red part this high? The reason for that is when you go one slide back, Chris, please. One more. There is the most sensitive part of the total spectrum turns out to be for the red wavelengths. So when as Philips we want to make a LED fixture as efficient as possible, we try to put in as most red light as possible. But
Gotcha.
On the other hand, and now I would like you to go back to the slide I was just explaining. Yeah, what we see here as the second point or as a second function of blue light is a stomatal activity. So when we wouldn't put any blue light in our fixtures, then the stomatas wouldn't function as they should be. They won't open on time, and they won't open that much. Then there's another, the third one. The third function of blue light is that blue light has plays a role in the color of your crop. So the darkness of your leaves, or as Doug just mentioned, in case of lettuce, the way how red colored lettuce species, how the way they color or the way they get their red colors. So that's the functions of the blue light. Then when we go further to the red, and as mentioned here, the red, far red, we put it together because basically when you talk about the development of your crop, then it's all, or in most of the cases, it's about the red, far red ratio. Here as well, the red far red ratio can have a huge impact on the morphology of the crop, and this time it's more about the elongation. So the more red, and more important, the more far red we add to a light recipe, the more elongated our crop will be. And then there's another function of the red far red ratio, and that has to deal with the flowering. So the red far red ratio in our light recipe can play a big role in determining when and in what way our crops will start flowering. And same goes for the germination of our seeds. There are and that doesn't count for all species, but there are species which won't germinate very uniform or don't germinate at all, and there's no far red in the light spectrum. So that's basically the main functions of the several wavelengths we use in our LEDs.
All right. One of our attendees, Brian, hi there, Brian, it's a friend of mine, wants to know about disease development and whether ultraviolet or any other wavelength could impact foliar disease development. Do we know about that?
Well, what we know about that basically is that there is a relation between the disease development and light spectrum, but that's too complex and too and the differences between several diseases and different species of plants are too big to just put one general rule in that. So there are effects, but it's very complex to explain them.
Well, I figure he's a PhD. I knew he'd ask a complex question with complex answers, but I'm sure I'll connect you two together later on. How about that?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So just to go back a moment.
Yep.
Yeah. So just to let's put this in this slide in a practical setting. It's one of the reasons that far red ratio is important for flowering, and we see this with, let's say, for example, a tomato grower. A tomato grower will always allow the crop to experience a natural end to the day. They will not light into the night. And the reason for that is the plant needs to experience, after receiving the red light of the day, needs to experience that shift in far red ratio as the sun sets, so that proper flowering development will occur.
Yeah, that's a very clear example of the red far ratio. That's true. Yep.
So in this side, light measurements. So light measurements, how we measure light, and and therefore the language of light has changed over the years. A long time ago, we used to use terminology such as foot candles. You know, it's rather interesting to think back about that. The other thing that the other way of measuring light is watts. Watts is the instantaneous measurement of light at this second. So growers might say, oh, yeah, the light intensity right now is 700 watts external of my greenhouse. I need to pull my shade curtain. So watts is seen as an instantaneous reading. Lumens, as the old saying goes, lumens are for humans. So we would talk about lumens in an office or in a building. It's what we perceive as humans, which is typically in that orange, yellow, and green color or wavelength. Greenhouse growers always speak about joules, and joules is the sum of all of the watts that the computer measured every second from sunrise to sunset, and that gives us a sum of the amount of light, because joules is really the sum of the watt seconds that were accumulated during the day. But now we begin to speak about moles, because we want to speak about PAR photons. Joules is global radiation. That's all the wavelengths of light. Well, we're not always interested in all of the wavelengths. We want to talk about photosynthetically active radiation, those ones. So moles has taken over from joules in many cases, because we want to still know what the sum of the light that has fallen on the plant. We still want to know what the sum is. And the micromoles is really overtaking or what we used to talk about watts. What is the instantaneous light? So when we talk about micromoles, we talk about micromoles, the intensity per square meter per second. And then over the seconds in a day, we can then compute what the moles are.
Right. So when we're talking 24-hour day, when you're talking days to calculate how much light your greenhouse is receiving.
Actually, we're talking photoperiod, which is the number of hours of lighting, whether that's sun plus LED. So, for example, if we're applying light for 18 hours, we would, to convert that to seconds, we would take the number of hours of total lighting, supplemental plus sunshine, and multiply it by 3,600, which is the seconds in an hour. So this is all pretty confusing. We've got lumens, we've got...
You're looking inside my head right now.
Yeah. We've got lumens, foot candles, joules, all of these things that are measuring light, including a new term called DLI, Daily Light Integral. And that is really the sum of the moles that have been collected all day. So the light sum. So now we talk about very specific things, photons, packets of light, PAR, the photosynthetically active, the micromoles, all of that. And it all comes down to what is the DLI. So particles of light, so photons, those are packets of light, PAR, photosynthetic active radiation, micromoles, that's on a per second basis, and moles is a sum. But it all comes down to DLI, daily light integral. And we are now able to talk about tomato crops or lettuce crops or other crops that, that we know or have a very good idea of how many moles per day they need. What is the daily light integral for those? So just some examples, tomatoes, we have a pretty good understanding that we want to provide them with 23 to 25 moles per day. That would be their DLI. We want to not exceed, say, 190 or 195 moles per week. That's when we know, when we measure our outside radiation sums, yeah, maybe we've got to pull the shade curtain to protect them a little bit, because after that, the tomato becomes very inefficient in using it. So we've got some good examples there of DLI. So what we have coming right back to the beginning of this, Chris, is that we're talking about winter production with supplemental lighting. And why? Well, we only get 5 to 10 moles per day outside, but our plant needs 25 moles or 23 moles in the case of a tomato. So how are we going to get those other, 15, 20, 25 moles? How are we going to get that? So if we look at some locations, 3 very distinct climate zones in North America. We've got a continental climate typified by a land mass around a body of water, fresh water. The Great Lakes region would be an example of a continental climate. High desert, dry, high elevation, 16, 1,800 meters. A maritime climate, one of the coastal areas. So we can look at that, and what I find most interesting about this chart is that even though there's a rather disparate climate zones, they all have very similar light. The continental climate actually may have a little bit higher light because of the latitude that may a latitude component.
Yeah, I was noticing more than high desert, which I would anticipate high desert having more light than
one
continental.
would think so, but if
but
you look
in the spring and summer it does, but not in the fall and winter.
Sure, because maybe what's contributing to that lower moles per week or DLI is their latitude.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So now I'm going to turn it over to Erik to talk a little bit about the lettuce research that's been going on in Europe in particular, which is leading the way in this crop.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. What I would like to outline is how we as Philips developed the application of LEDs in this particular example, lettuce, for the past 4 years. Because lettuce isn't that high a crop, we are mainly using our top lighting fixtures, and this slide gives quite a good impression of how we developed our research. So as I just mentioned, we started 4 years ago with just a very basic proof of principle, HPS lighting versus LEDs. The light level at that time was 50 micromoles per meter square per second. We chose this light level because in North and Western Europe, most of the growers which applied HPS, they apply a light level of about 50 micromoles per meter square per second. After that, we set up another test, because what we saw in this first proof of principle is that with LEDs we got a higher yield and we got better quality of our lettuce plants, of our product or our produce. So the next year we decided to look what more was possible. So we increased the light level up to 75 micromoles per meter square per second, and we used a couple different treatments. One of them was a mix of 66% HPS and 33% LED light, and we compared that with a full LED treatment. The other thing we tested in this year was what the effect of a low or a high blue percentage in our LED spectrum is on the yield and the quality of our crops. We took our learnings on these trials, and with these data we set up another test in the winter of 2015-2016, where we put 3 different LED or lighting recipes. One was again a hybrid recipe with a major part of HPS supplemented with 25 micromoles per meter square per second LED. We compared that with 2 full LED treatments, which were 75 and 50 micromoles per meter square per second. When we compared all the data from these 3 years, we set up another test this year, and we can't share any of these results anymore or yet. But the goal of this year's tests is that we want to quantify the effect of a higher light level. What we saw in the 3 previous years is light levels up to, let's say, 75 micromoles per meter square per second. This year we go to 100 micromoles and more. So at the end of this spring, we will be able to share these results with you. Now let's go back to this first test, our, let's say, proof of principle: 50 micromoles of HPS versus 50 micromoles of LED. The most important results was that our lettuce plants got more weight they got better coloration. So what we mean by that is that the green species, they were darker green, and the red species, they turned red more even and with a deeper, brighter red color, which can be a hard time to achieve it with only HPS lighting. Another thing we saw was faster growth, less elongation of the pit of the lettuce plants, and of course, because we use a more efficient light source, we were able to save energy.
And Erik, were these real world tests, greenhouses?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Glass, plastic, what kind of facility?
Glass. They were Venlo greenhouses. I think most of the attendees know what I mean by that. But that's a glass greenhouse with a gutter height of about 7 meters, so quite a modern greenhouse. And one important remark with this is that all these tests, they were done on a mobile gutter system, so an NFT system basically.
All right, good, thanks.
Well, after our first year, we got some questions from our customers and from ourselves, of course. So what would be the effect of the percentage of a blue light in our spectrum? And we wanted to clarify more the differences between a hybrid and a full LED treatment. We did a lot of tests with that, but to summarize it, I put it in this table for you. So in general, we can see that the speed of the crop, when you just compare the same light level of a hybrid treatment and a full LED treatment, then there doesn't have to be a big difference in the speed of your crop. But on the other hand, when you talk about compactness, when you talk about tip burn, so the level of tip burn, what occurs in your, or what can occur in your plants, and the level of coloration, in all these three factors, we see that full LED spectrum improves the quality level of the lettuce plants. So full LED gives you a more compact plant with less tip burn and a better coloration.
All right. Real quick, Erik, because I don't want to run out of time here. There's a question from Kaylin who says they've tested Philips LEDs on red lettuce and noticed a decrease in the redness of their plants compared to fluorescent or HPS. And he's wondering, any thoughts on that? Add more light? He just doesn't know if he wants to do a large-scale change-out yet because of that.
Yeah, that can be the light level. That can be temperature, because when you compare HPS to LEDs, for example, then with LEDs you apply much less radiant heat, and so basically that comes back to one of our first slides of this webinar, is that when you change the supplemental light of your greenhouse, then you need also to take into account all the other growing factors which altogether determine what the yield and the quality of your crop is.
Yeah, in fact, Erik, the same person wondered if replacing their HPS with LEDs was going to change their heating needs because of the heat that the high pressure sodium lights naturally give off. So maybe that could be a factor in there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I won't say then that it changes the heating needs, but it definitely changes the way how you use your heating system.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Well, to go further with our lettuce results, this graph shows you the level of coloration we saw in 4 different cultivars. So in each of the cultivars, we can see that the higher the light level is and the higher the amount of LED, or the bigger the LED part is, the better the coloration we achieve. And there's one next slide about this. Oh, can we go? Yeah, this one. What this slide shows is the fresh weight of our plants we achieved with 60 and 70 micromole light levels compared to the 50 micromole light level. And in each of these cultivars, we see that the fresh weight increases when we apply more light and a higher part LED in the total spectrum. So when we summarize it, so next slide please, Chris. What we see in general is that when we apply more light, we can gain more weight and we can get a higher production. With HPS, as already mentioned, the total light intensity is limited because we can run into quality problems when we apply too much light or when we apply too much lighting hours. On the other hand, when we apply LED lighting, then we can get a better quality with less stib burn, better coloration, and basically what we see is that the risks of our or the risks to run into all of these quality issues, they decrease a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Erik. That was good. One of the points, one of the questions that came up was, will more blue increase the red coloration? Maybe you would be able to address that more blue issue in relation to physiological disorders and the extent of coloration.
Can you repeat that? Doc,
yeah. Yeah, the question is, should one add more red light or more blue light to get that stronger coloration?
Yeah, that can be for several species. We've seen that adding more blue light definitely increases the level of red coloration. Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, it also increases the risk of physiological disorders. Yeah,
that's the other thing. Yeah.
So it's all a balancing act.
It's all about the ratio between all your growing factors. Yeah.
Yeah, and this comes down to the question about the temperature and what Erik was saying about nutrition. Okay, I'm going to add more light. If I don't change my nutritional strategy or my irrigation strategy or my CO2 strategy, things become out of balance.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in this image, we have different, from a high wire perspective, tomatoes, cucumbers particularly, you know, we have the opportunity, we have examples of all of these, starting from the left, where we've got a high wire crop, a tomato, cucumber, with only LED top lighting, or only a single line of LED interlighting, or a double line only of LED interlighting. And we see these examples in cucumber crops or tomato crops. Then, of course, there's the interlighting plus top lighting, where growers are looking to install high levels of light intensity. But where the LEDs make it possible is that we can, instead of looking at 215 micromoles of HPS lighting above the crop. With LEDs, we can actually take that total quantity and split it evenly between the from above the crop and within the crop. And one of the big advantages there is that if we put a lot of HPS on top of the crop, and the HPS is in an older greenhouse where it's too close, that light source and that heat source is too close to the youngest, least mature leaves. Whereas with LEDs, we can apply a high light source even to those less mature leaves, but more importantly, we can put the interlighting inside the crop where the leaves are the youngest mature leaves. Let's put it this way. The leaves that are young adults, let's say.
And that's what allows you to use these lights in the stacked warehouse growing system.
That's right.
Somebody is asking, James is asking, you can position lights as close as 12 to 24 inches. There is heat, but not as much, and you do a good job dissipating that heat with these systems, right?
Yeah, the heat is negligible, and that's why in multi-layer systems, say for example you're growing lettuce in a sole source environment, that's an issue where we would say, okay, let's put in full spectrum, in other words white, red, blue, and the core red and blue with some white, and we see that possible. There are many city farm or vertical farm, whichever word you'd like to use, applications where it significantly reduces the need for such large air conditioning or heat mitigation equipment. So if we look at LEDs versus HPS, LEDs, and Erik alluded to this just a moment ago, LEDs are cold light, whereas HPS is hot light. So with it being cold, we can bring the light closer to the plants in a multi-layer situation. Cold light also means that the grower has to rethink his heating strategy. In the case of tomatoes and cucumbers, it may be the position of the grow pipe. Also, the advantage to the cold light is the grower can use the LEDs more into the spring and early summer when HPS is impossible. It's too warm. It's too warm. We're also looking at a focused wavelength rather than broad range. We're looking at high efficiency of the light rather than high energy consumption. In that regard, there is a significant, for the same light intensity, a significant reduction in energy, perhaps as high as 50% to 45 to 50% energy reduction. Low maintenance. The light, the LEDs last a very long time. The first milestone in that case is that, and the long operating hours, is that LEDs, the Philips LEDs, will continue to emit 90% of the original lighting output even after 25,000 hours, which in a tomato crop would be, say, 9 or 10 years. Whereas in HPS, those lamps have already been replaced probably twice and heading on to the third replacement.
So there must be some downside. You sound pretty magic here.
They are magic. I think what it boils down to is the level of investment. Let's face it, HPS fixtures are cheap. They're much less expensive. But if you, for the initial investment, but if you look at the long range, if you take a long range approach, then and growers should be, in the long run, just the electricity savings will pay for the LEDs as opposed to HPS. Maintenance costs, all of those things all add up in favor of the LEDs.
Right, and we covered that in detail in the last webinar.
Yeah, there you go. So we won't dwell on that. So the cold light gives the grower more More flexibility drives the optimal growth, lowers the operational cost, lowers the labor costs because they don't need to be, there's no reflector that needs to be cleaned, and less frequent replacement. So this slide just really summarizes what I just said. There's no moving parts. There's no fan or water cooling pumps or anything like that. They're watertight. The grower can pressure wash them. Things like that. Uniform light distribution, which is key. We don't want dark spots in the greenhouse. So we've got a few examples here of innovative growers leading on. This company is a tomato grower. They are using, growing in this case, this is their beefsteak tomatoes. They are using 2 lines of interlighting without any top lighting, and very successfully producing a winter tomato crop.
Where are they located?
They're in Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah. This grower is in Alberta. Again, his focus is winter production to maintain his market, to protect his market, supply a nice local market that he has built and doesn't want to lose it. So that would be considered high desert. This is also the other part of his operation, the lettuce side of it. They've installed LED top lighting for their lettuce. It's been, for them, a very good experience.
And it's way up there, too. It's not like you have to hang it within a few feet of the crop.
No, not at all, because the light plan is we have a target that we want at the crop. We can have it as high as we want, and create a light plan that will give us what we want at the crop level. And this is very important. Philips always makes a light plan. We don't want to just say, yeah, put up some lights and they're magic. It's no. We need to measure and calculate properly. This grower is in the eastern part of the United States, northeast, well, not northeast, sorry, north, but just in Michigan area, and Michigan, Ohio, that Great Lakes area. And when they installed the LED top lighting, they reduced the production time by several days. It was quite positive. Not only the head weight increased, but the speed of production increased.
Yeah, and that's typical Venlo greenhouse, right, Eric? And with all that light coming in, you wouldn't think you would even need supplemental lighting, but you pretty much explained, especially for the winter time, what a difference it can make.
For example, that looks like a wonderful, beautiful day. However, in the winter, when we're really talking about the need for supplemental lighting, we have 2 factors. Well, several factors. One, short day. Mm-hmm. We need to, day length, the increase in day length keeps the plant active. Mm-hmm. Okay, so 18 hours, 20 hours, 15, whatever's needed. Number 2 is that the spectrum is correct for the crop. So all of these things factored in, yeah, you can get a lot of light, but it's just too short. This grower is located on the west coast of Canada, in British Columbia. They are using a combination of top lighting plus interlighting, aiming for around 210 micromoles of LED top lighting and interlighting. So we just wanted to remind people that are with us that we will be attending as an exhibitor at the Indoor Ag Con that's coming up the 3rd and 4th in Las Vegas. Cultivate 17, which is of course always a perennial favorite, in Columbus. The Canadian Greenhouse Conference October 4th and 5th, and PMA Express Summit, which is October 19th and 21st. Good way to get your question answered. The next step there, one of the trade shows. We don't have time, but we're going to take questions anyway for those who have asked them. And if you, it's exactly what I want to know. Want to stick on, do. If not, this will be archived. Please use webinars. Back to it. Real quick, when we look through a few of these, there's a few that are technical here. James has two questions. First is, LED lights use the light to chemical profile. Erik, would you like to tackle that one? Hello, Erik.
You guys that good anymore?
Sorry, Erik.
Well, I think there is a little problem with our connection, and I see someone of the attendees also questioning about it. But so I couldn't hear your answer.
So about the LEDs and the phytochemical profile. Well, we seem to be having problems with Erik now, even though he's not muted or anything. He is way over in Venlo. They shut off the internet over there. You never know. How about
I'll try to.
I don't know if you want to tackle that one or maybe go down.
Yeah, I can. Let's have a. There's a lot of research going on in this regard, and particularly with in the pharmaceutical industry. I know that there has been some work in Nicotiana in this case, and looking at intensity and spectrum for the enhancement of those chemicals that they want to harvest from Nicotiana.
Yeah, and the key is this technology is really new to the plant world. It's in its infancy.
Absolutely.
And there's so much more research to be done than has already been done. We're just at the beginning stages of
it.
James also asks, and you kind of touched on this, how nutrients impact the way the lights work.
It's actually, I think, the other way around. If we add more light, then nutrition or water or one of the other key components becomes the limiting factor. So yes, really, but it's the other way around. I'm going to add light to this. We look at our nutrient profile, look at it the same way as we approach spring and summer. What adjustments do we make as we get more light naturally? The grower will change or modify the irrigation strategy accordingly.
All right.
Yeah.
Dimitri wants to know, since LEDs are so efficient, I mean, you gave the laundry list of all the benefits, why are growers still reluctant to switch from their tried and true, so to speak, high-pressure sodium?
For many growers, it's about electrical efficiency, and we see the cost of electricity rising in many places. We see that growers don't want to spend money on the maintenance of the HPS, and they're also seeing the benefits of having greater control based on how they're lighting and how long in towards summer that they want to light. So there's a lot of reasons why people are wanting to change away from the HPS and have more control over the climate in the greenhouse rather than being subjected to the heat provided by HPS.
All right, and I apologize. I see a few messages coming in now about audio issues. I apologize for that. That's an internet thing. We are at the mercy of technology. Apparently, that's not as good as Philips. If Philips ran the internet, we'd have something all right there. And Kaylin wants to know, and I think you kind of illustrated a few here, are there case studies available? We'll use this as the last one here. Case studies available for large-scale change-outs from high-pressure sodium to LEDs. And you're saying go right here, huh?
Yeah, there are case studies on our on the Philips website that you can look into, Kaylin, and maybe there's something there that will address your specific question. Yeah, I think there might be something there of interest for you.
All right. Well, if you have more questions, head out to the Philips website. We put it up there for you, and there's plenty of data available. Plus, I'm sure there's ways to get in touch with a Philips expert, because a lot of these questions are very, very technical, and there's going to be a lot of, well, it depends kind of answers, right? And Doug's nodding his head knowingly. All right. Now, I mentioned the archive a couple of times, ballpublishing.com/webinars. We'll get it up there as soon as we can, but you can refer back to that as you need to pick up more of this information. And just a quick commercial, if you don't mind, Doug, I've got an upcoming webinar next Tuesday, as a matter of fact, on weeds. No, not that kind of weed. Controlling weeds in the greenhouse and other covered structures. So you can sign up for that pretty much at the same place you do everything, ballpublishing.com/webinars. So with that, for Doug and Erik here from Philips, all the folks at Philips, and for all of my peeps here at Ball Publishing who keep things moving, this is Chris Beytes saying so long, everybody.